So I've mentioned in previous videos that a great way to improve your art quickly is to study from your favorite artist. So today I want to explain exactly how I go about doing a study like this. I'll be doing an art study from Sam Does Arts while I talk and just kind of give you guys some tips and things along the way. So let me get something out of the way really quickly before we start. Doing an art study of an artist's style is not plagiarizing or stealing or anything like that. Now, if I were to copy this piece exactly and post it on social media and say, hey, look what I did, with no credit or mention of the original artist, then yeah, that's stealing. But when you do art studies like these and are doing them purely for educational purposes, there's nothing wrong with doing that. I've seen plenty of artists do master studies of famous artists and their paintings, and this is essentially the same concept. So if you're ever kind of unsure about it, you can either ask the artist directly, what they're okay with, or just don't post it on social media anywhere. This study is purely for your benefit, so you don't have to share it with anybody. And I do feel like though, if you stay away from doing these because you're scared of being deemed an art thief or something, I can promise you there's plenty of artists that have done these before, and there's nothing really taboo about it as long as you're going about it the right way. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's talk about the two ways that you can approach doing an art study from your favorite artist. The first is to do a one-to-one, basically exact replica of one of their paintings. This helps you get a better feel for their process and maybe how they think about things as they paint. It's a great way to do a more in-depth analysis of their painting style, more so than just looking at their painting. You're getting like a hands-on feel for it, basically. So the other way is to get inspiration from a bunch of their paintings and try to create your own painting using their same art style. So the goal here is to make your painting almost look like it could have come from the same hand as that artist. Like you're trying to get as close as you can to their art style. I recommend doing both of these approaches because they're both a lot of fun and they also both have their own benefits. But today I'm going to be doing the second method. So I spent way too long on Pinterest and I found this reference that I want to use. So I'm going to try and paint it in Sam's style. I also went through and found a few of his paintings that I feel like I can draw inspiration from for this specific reference that I want to use. And I've set them over here to the left of my screen on my iPad. And I should mention, I do own the brush set from this artist, which is definitely going to help in trying to create a piece in his style, but it's not necessary for doing studies like these. So just remember, the point here is to learn what you can about their process so that you can use it in your own work. It's not necessarily trying to recreate their work exactly. Before I did any actual painting, I wanted to analyze this art style. So the goal here is to pick out what makes this style recognizable as Sam's style. So the first thing that I notice is a majority of his paintings are done using very simple brushes. There's not a ton of textures in them, although he does have a few texture brushes that he uses in each painting that I do think help kind of define his style, like the rake brush, for example. But I feel like maybe like 80% of the actual painting is done with using like a round brush. When he does use texture brushes, he seems very strategic in where he places it. I don't think he just throws it on the canvas for no reason. Like he seems to have very deliberate action with it. His characters' faces all seem to have this general kind of like Disney-esque style. Like you can see a lot of inspiration from like the Disney kind of face. The skin and lighting in his paintings are very bright and saturated. There's like this orangish glow a lot of the skin of his paintings have. There's also subtle differences like blues from the sky in the skin. They're very subtle, but I think it helps add a lot of depth to his paintings. So the shadows aren't really any crazy colors. They look very realistic. I do know just from following him for a while that he uses a lot of references. I think that helps him add some of these subtle differences because he's seen that they happen in real life. As far as his line art, he doesn't really have like a full in-depth line art that he follows, but he does have some lines kind of peeking through, which I find really interesting. I think that is another cool part of his style. His backgrounds, they look very complex, but when you zoom in, they really are fairly simple, which I think that's so cool. But yeah, I think that's really interesting. And I definitely think it's part of what makes his style unique. And I want to try and keep all of these things in mind while I paint. I've created a board here that shows my reference and a bunch of Sam's paintings that I think will be useful in recreating this reference. So I'm gonna try and keep my art study to an hour. I do this to try and keep myself from getting bogged down in the details and spending too long trying to make it perfect, make it look exactly like Sam's style. That's not gonna happen. So I'm giving myself an hour to try and pull as much as I can from his paintings. I do still kind of want this study to have a little bit of my own artistic style, but I want to try and focus on what Sam does in his artwork to see if I can learn something from them. So one thing I find really interesting is how Sam approaches painting grass. He's got a few different colors in his grass. What really makes it dynamic is he's put this texture on top using a rake brush. So this kind of gives the illusion of grass without having to spend a long time drawing each individual blade. And so that's what I'm gonna do in my painting and just see if I can replicate it in my own way. So the colors I chose for the grass are quite different than the references I'm using. If I did this study again, I'd probably spend more time trying to get the colors to more closely resemble the colors that Sam used in his paintings, but I liked the saturated colors at the time, and by the time that I wanted to change it, it was kind of too late. I only had an hour, so I had to keep going, but that's something I can remember for my next study. I want to keep my background pretty simple. A lot of the references I have of his paintings have these very puffy clouds, which I wanted to try and create. I noticed that he uses a texture brush around the edges, and it looks really interesting, so I'm gonna try doing that too. I've seen some process videos of Sam's work before, and he tends to start with the background first. I think in a video he has said that he does this because it makes it easier to fit the characters into the background once you know what the background looks like. So that's what I'm doing here. But once I do start on my characters, I'm keeping the shapes very basic and using a pretty basic color palette for the design. I noticed in one of the paintings over here that there's this like purplish shadow on the side of this girl's face, and that's something that I want to try using too. I really struggle with my shadows, so I don't know if that was like the right call or not, but that's what we're going with. In the end result, I do like it. I do feel like it doesn't quite look as realistic as I'd like, but I do still like it, so yeah. As I'm kind of finishing up this study here, I want to go over some things that I felt like I learned from doing this study. When you do these kind of studies, you'll learn different things just based on what skill level you're at and, what artist you're following and how you approach it. But after doing this specific study, I really want to keep building on this approach to painting grass and trying to just let textured brushes do a lot of the work for me. I feel like after doing this, it seems like Sam tends to put down a very basic shape for like the background, for example. Like he'll start with very basic shapes, and then as he continues on, he'll add texture in the later stages. I feel like I've always relied a little too much on texture brushes, so it was really kind of fun to see that just using like one or two texture brushes can still help you get your point across really easily, which I do want to kind of try and keep doing that in the future and just see how that goes. Yeah, I think I may end up doing another study of the way that he paints grass just to see if I can get it to look a little bit closer to how he does it. I'm not thrilled with the end result of mine in this study, but yeah, I do feel like it helped me kind of see where I could improve next. I think I rely too much on texture brushes, so it's cool to see how Sam does it. Yeah, I feel like I have a tendency to kind of get lost in trying to do too much at once when I'm painting. And so it seems like after doing this, it really seems like Sam starts with a very basic shapes and basic forms, and then kind of moves his way up very slowly. And so by starting with basic shapes and making sure that everything kind of works before I continue with like texture and things like that, I think that would really help me with my own process. And I think that's what I'm going to start trying to do from here on out, and just kind of see how it goes, especially with environments. I think that would help me a lot because I get so overwhelmed with environments and trying to do so much so quickly. So it was really nice to kind of just start with basic shapes and then have a little bit of texture towards the end. And yeah, so this was just an hour. This is just kind of what I learned from doing this one study. I recommend doing these I mean, as often as you want or as often as you can. I think they really help you improve much quicker than trying to learn things on your own. You can really learn from these artists who know what they're doing. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe before you head out, and I'll see you guys in the next one.